Hi everybody, it's Glenn Depke from Depke Wellness, and today, rather than writing an article, it's a busy week with Thanksgiving and such coming up, so I thought I'd do a short video with something that I think would be the most helpful and the most generous thing that I can actually do, which is really just to provide some simple tips to survive the Thanksgiving holiday. Now, a lot of this is going to be tied into what's going on from a food consumption standpoint. So there's a couple of things and ways and tips and action steps you can take to actually make the Thanksgiving meal something very successful for you. Because if we think about typically what goes on is we overconsume food, we stuff ourselves, we usually drink too much, often end up stressed out due to maybe some relatives that we're usually not too keen about hanging around, and in the end we get lethargic, we're exhausted, and probably don't even sleep well that night because of everything going on. So if that sounds like your typical Thanksgiving, let's do that different this year. All right, so here's some really great tips. Now, the first thing that I'll say, there's an old, I'll even refer to this as kind of a little white lie or an old wives' tale. Everybody's blaming the turkey on the fact it gets sleepy on Thanksgiving afternoon or Thanksgiving evening. And most people are going to say, oh, well, it's all the tryptophan in the turkey that's making you want to fall asleep. And you know what? The amount of tryptophan that's in the turkey is not going to be broken down, absorbed and assimilated, and go into the whole process of being converted from protein to amino acids to tryptophan to 5-HTP to serotonin and melatonin to make you feel sleepy in a few hours. It just doesn't happen that way. Now, what does make us sleepy, though, is the typical high level of carbohydrate consumption during our Thanksgiving meal. Taking multiple pieces of bread with butter, the stuffing, all of the processed carbohydrates. So any type of a flour product that is made into a food is really what's making you sleepy. And the challenge with that is what happens with processed carbs is it really jacks up glucose. So glucose goes up, and it goes up rather rapidly to the point where then your body releases a lot of insulin, and then very often what will happen is the quick insulin release will drop the glucose too low, really even creating now this cycle where, you're maybe even craving some other sweets, which is another challenge with the holiday meal, of course. But the big thing, though, is when the blood sugar keeps going up and down, you're just crashing and burning. So don't blame the turkey anymore for getting tired. Really look at yourself and the amount of carbohydrates that you consume, those simple carbs, and recognizing that that's the biggest issue. So the tip number one is to significantly reduce or even eliminate the consumption of those carbohydrates. Like I'll go to a Thanksgiving meal every year, whether it be a group of people at our house or going to somebody else's house, and I'll typically, what I'll do is I'll pick the cut of turkey that I enjoy the most, which happens to be the dark meat, and I'll pick an assortment of vegetables that I would enjoy, and I might pick one carbohydrate, little treat that I'm going to have a small amount of that I wouldn't typically have any other time of the year, as long as it's still gluten-free for me, which is something that I'm committed to and something that's important for my health. And now, outside of that, when we think about what's available for you at the Thanksgiving meal, because if you're just saying, well, I'm going to go to, Aunt Judy's house, just as an example, I'm going to Aunt Judy's and she always makes a great spread, I don't have to bring anything, offer to bring something. Because when you bring something, you could bring something that you enjoy that you would also consider to be healthy. So this way, even if there's many choices on the table that you don't really feel are in your best interest of health, you'll have a dish that you brought that you enjoy that will be healthy for you. So that's a great way to go about this. And that's something that myself and my wife do on a regular basis. Almost wherever we go, we'll offer to bring a dish because, not only are we going to bring something we're going to enjoy, we're hoping that also others will enjoy it, but it gives us that option. So that's another great thing that you could do to help yourself on the holidays. Now, for those of you, it's not like I didn't do this early enough to where you can actually get an enzyme and a stomach acid, but if you actually do have enzymes and stomach acid, perhaps a betaine HCl supplement, these are great things to take with you wherever you go on Thanksgiving. And because we do tend to overeat, think about this. Generally speaking, when you're at somebody's house, there's going to be some hors d'oeuvres. And unfortunately, we almost fill up on hors d'oeuvres. We could just leave after that and be completely satisfied. But after the hors d'oeuvres and the appetizers, now we have our meal, which we typically do a couple of platefuls of a meal. So the one thing that I would recommend is, as you're going through the appetizers, take an enzyme during that. But then when you move into the meal, take another enzyme, and then even toward the end of the meal, take yet another enzyme, just to help breaking down this basically an overconsumption of food. And what I would also suggest is toward the end of the meal, take a couple of betaine HCl to actually help with not only breaking down the protein, but also helps with minerals and B vitamins. But there's another reason for the betaine HCl, because if you think about the Thanksgiving meal, a lot of times it's potluck. So think about this. What happens with potluck? Potluck means that somebody has made a dish at their home, and then they've just put it in a container, and then they're going to travel with this dish, and then this dish might just go out and sit on a table. So there's a good chance that something that you're digging into that somebody brought as a part of the Thanksgiving dinner was cooked like 5 or 6 hours ago, and has had 5 or 6 hours to basically grow bacteria. So it's not uncommon to actually get food poisoning, and it's not like anybody's purposely doing this. But in case you actually feel toward the end of the night or the next day where maybe your stool has become loose, maybe there's quite a bit of bloating and gassiness, and some just overall general GI distress that is a little bit to an extreme, you might have gotten food poisoning. So a little remedy to assist your immune system in overcoming that is, if you have probiotics at home, before you go to bed, if you feel that this is the case for you, take about 100 billion count of probiotics before you go to bed, and generally that will help your immune system in taking care of that detrimental bacteria, that bad bacteria that we call food poisoning. And then the other part of this, when I was mentioning that betaine HCl, the stomach acid supplement, when you have proper amounts of stomach acid, whether you're producing enough on your own or with the advantage of also using a supplementation, that makes it very tough for bacteria and different pathogens and infections to survive the stomach itself. So if you support with the stomach acid, not only does it help with breaking down your protein, absorption of minerals and B vitamins, it actually helps if you have actually ingested some kind of a pathogen, some type of a bacteria or infection. So that's another great tip that you can use. The other aspect, while we'll stay on the subject of food, is really watch your quantity. I think that's the biggest thing. When you go to somebody's house and you're grabbing a plate of appetizers, grab the small plate, fill it once, and be done. Don't go back for your favorite appetizer 3 or 4 or 5 more times. And I would say use that same basic rule and focus really with your meal as well. Take one plate of food, make sure you've gotten your favorite things on there. Watch what's going on with your carbohydrate consumption. Take that one plate of food and be done. If you have one plate of appetizers and one plate of your dinner itself, or whether it be a lunchtime or a dinner time Thanksgiving meal for you, breaking down and lessening the quantity will actually be a world of good for you as well. And then a couple other things that are challenges very often for people on the Thanksgiving holiday. Next one would be alcohol consumption. I mentioned Aunt Judy before. Well, maybe Uncle John is somebody who is a cocktail connoisseur, and he just loves to make cocktails, make certain drinks, and he's the one who's going to be pushing this on you to make sure that you're having fun by drinking alcohol. Now, I'm not going to say don't drink alcohol, but I will say that if you're going to drink, between every alcoholic alcoholic beverage that you have, drink at least 12 ounces of water. That way it'll slow down the alcohol consumption, and it will actually help to hydrate you, because the alcohol itself is very dehydrating and can be another role in why you don't feel good on Thanksgiving afternoon and Thanksgiving evening. So that's another great one. And then, of course, the very important tip if you're drinking and you know you've consumed more than 2 drinks, and of course, depending on size, for some people it's more than 1, don't drink and drive. It's the one thing that we all have control over. That's a very easy choice and a very easy decision to make. And if you think you're going to drink, just, give your keys to somebody else. Don't even let it be a question later, if you've had a few too many and now you're depending on your own judgment as to whether you're going to drive or not. Take that choice away from yourself. And the last thing that I'm going to share is I mentioned earlier, you might be around some relatives that maybe they're not your favorite person to hang out with. And you can really change what's going on here, because the only thing you control is you, right? You don't control the cousin or the aunt or the uncle or the brother or sister, whomever it may be, that irritates you, that rubs you the wrong way, that always seems to say the wrong thing. Just recognize that you don't control them. You only control you. And if you go in with an attitude of, maybe that person who is annoying you, who's rubbing you the wrong way, just say to yourself, you know what, this person is doing the best they can. I may not appreciate it, I may not like it, but I can accept it, because the acceptance of them doing their best is what changes within me. And when you change how you're perceiving and looking at the situation, well then, you know what, the whole situation changes, and that's where you have control. And even from another standpoint, I've heard this from people in the past where they've said, well, I just, they have this really attitude and this focus that, I have to go here for Thanksgiving. Just remove the words have to and replace those with choose to. And that will change the dynamic of everything that goes on during that time of that visit, because you are really choosing to go somewhere. You don't have to go anywhere. And if you just change that shift in your language, you'll be amazed at how saying, well, I chose to go here and I'm choosing to hang out with this person who rubs me the wrong way, but I recognize that they're doing their best. And just that change in your language and your thought pattern can make it the best Thanksgiving that you've had in a number of years. So those are my tips. Take those and move forward into all of those if you can, or as many as possible, to really make this Thanksgiving something to truly be thankful for. And also, to end with this, I just really want to say thank you to you personally. It is completely my pleasure to share information and articles and videos in any way that I can, because it is my passion, and to basically to share health-related information to make a change and a shift for your life. So thank you for that opportunity, and everybody just have an awesome Thanksgiving.